The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 224.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today, before we get started, before we bring on our author and they discuss the book, I wanted to quickly mention a different format that we're going to try out in an upcoming episode. And really what we wanted to do is we thought books have changed so many people's lives. And we wanted to bring on a listener, someone who listens to this, an entrepreneur. And we wanted to bring on and maybe share their personal story of how books, how reading, how the nuggets that they pulled out of those books helped them personally and or professionally. So if you're listening to this right now and you fit that category, if you're an entrepreneur and books have helped change your life, we'd love to get you on, interview you, and maybe help that interview or use that interview to help others move forward personally and professionally. So the best way to reach out if you're interested in being, showcased or featured on the show, and it'll be an episode coming up here shortly. Reach out to me on Twitter. Direct message me at Wade D. Danielson. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll select a person to bring on and kind of take through this story here shortly. But I want to introduce today's author. It's Robbie Baxter, author of The Membership Economy. Find your super users, master the forever transaction, and build reoccurring revenue. This was a really fun interview, and Robbie did a fantastic job of breaking down her book. So without further ado, let's bring her on. Welcome, Robbie, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thanks for having me, Wade. I'm really happy to be here.
Definitely. Before we jump into the membership economy, will you take just a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you personally.
Sure. I've been a strategy consultant for the last 25 years. And for the last 15 years, I've been an independent consultant. And I've always been interested in how the psychology of the customer ties in with business models. So, I started my career at Booz Allen in Hamilton, worked a couple of years there, went to business school, worked in tech for a few years, and then started Peninsula Strategies, which is my consulting firm.
Very good. And so, first off, thank you for sharing that. And now let's jump right into your book, The Membership Economy. Find your super users, master the forever transaction, and build reoccurring revenue, which was made available actually not that long ago, March of 2015. And Robbie, we're going to move quickly. But here, we're here to cover the top questions that our listener and future reader would like to get answered. And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing The Membership Economy?
The inspiration behind writing The Membership Economy was actually a consulting project that I did about 12 years ago. So I had been a generalist as a consultant. I did strategy consulting for everything from salty snacks to pantyhose to technology and back again. And then I was asked to do a project at Netflix. And I fell in love with their business model. I mean, I loved it as a consumer. I loved 3 out at a time. I loved always having a movie available. I loved no late fees. I loved never having to think about paying, like it was all included, like a buffet. And as an MBA, I loved the business model because of the recurring revenue, the lack of lumpiness, the quantities of data they were collecting about their customers. And from that point on, I really only wanted to work with companies that were thinking about those kinds of issues. And I've been lucky because at the same time that I was falling in love with Netflix, a lot of other business people were falling in love with Netflix, and I started to get calls from companies who wanted to be the Netflix of music, of news, of software, of fill in the blank. And it really changed kind of the trajectory of my professional career. And I felt like I had to document what I was seeing because I saw the applications, not just in tech, but really across virtually every industry.
And this next question is so crucial because there's tons of books that come out every single day. So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, there's a lot of books about specific types of models, like how to have a subscription model. There's a few books out on that topic right now. There's books that talk about different kinds of trends or behavioral economics. But I think my book really takes a broad and strategic look at what is driving this major transformational trend, talks about specific examples across a pretty wide spectrum of organizational structure. So I look at everything from very small businesses like my neighborhood bookstore, Kepler's, and what they're doing with their membership model, all the way up to what big traditional companies like American Express, Weight Watchers, Caesars Entertainment, what those kinds of companies are doing with membership, and how those trends apply across everything in between. So that's a really different, much broader and much more strategic look at this major transformational trend.
And how did you write the book to be read? As far as, is this a book they can jump in and jump out, cherry picking information as needed? Or did you really write it to be read from front to back?
I wrote it to be jumped around in because that's how I read books. And I tried to make the chapters really clear and the chapter structure really clear. And I actually invite readers at the beginning to skip around and cherry pick. And I also invite them to email me or call me if something comes up for them, if they have a specific question or an observation, so that the book can be as useful as possible.
Perfect. So, Robbie, now that we know a little bit of the purpose, the background of the book, let's take a deep dive into the content itself. So we take the next 5 to 8 minutes and really let the listener, the future reader, get a great idea of what your book's all about.
Sure. So the book is divided into 4 sections. The first section talks about what the membership economy is, why it's happening right now, what the drivers are, and gives the reader a sense of what the implications are in the big picture, kind of across the social and professional landscape. So big picture, big ideas. The second section is what I think of as kind of the deep meat of the book, the most tactical section. And that goes into the 7 steps to the membership economy, which I outline in detail. And that's where people really can get tidbits that they can apply to their own businesses right away. And I talk about what the implications are of the membership economy for the way you organize your company. So the titles of people, the kinds of responsibilities people should have, corporate culture. I talk about the importance of the new kind of funnel, which actually isn't a funnel, but is more of an hourglass, where after the point of transaction, the funnel widens up because of the recurring revenue model and because of the viral nature of so many membership businesses. The third section is about onboarding. So I believe that most organizations underinvest in onboarding new customers. So they're so excited that they get somebody to sign up and become a customer that they forget that if the customer doesn't get a good experience and get good value from the product or service that they've bought, they're not going to be loyal. And you need to get that behavior going and that engagement happening in the first 30 days. So I talk a lot about how you need to onboard new members. The 4th and 5th sections, pricing and the use of free, really talk about how your members should pay and how to think about your pricing structure. We talk about the use of subscription models, but we also talk about other sources of revenue. So I have I think 6 different revenue streams that I talk about in the book that membership organizations can layer on top of one another in order to build a really robust model. And I talk about the use of free and freemium as a really useful tool for extending the reach of your organization. In the 6th chapter, I talk about technology and what kinds of technologies are available for managing ongoing relationships, building loyalty, and mastering retention. And then finally, I talk about the importance of a focus on the customer over the product. A lot of people say the product is at the center of everything we do. It's all about the product. And I actually believe it's all about the customer. And that's cheap talk. But what I talk about in chapter 7 is how the organization can actually build out a customer success team and a culture that promotes a focus on the customer as more important than the product. So that's section 2. Section 3 goes into the 6 different types of organizations that are currently benefiting from the membership economy. And so that's the digital natives, which are subscription businesses and online communities. It's large traditional companies that have always employed membership models, but are now becoming more sophisticated about their use of technology. Those are companies like T-Mobile, like Weight Watchers. And then I talk about small businesses and professional services firms. And then I talk about nonprofits and professional societies and trade guilds. And finally, I talk about what I call the gateway to the membership economy, which are loyalty programs. In the fourth section, I talk about the specific points of opportunity, the points of inflection in the membership economy, which are really the hardest spots for entrepreneurs to be successful in the membership economy. So that's things like going from idea to startup. Like, how do you build a membership organization from a blank slate? I talk about going from being a hot, cool startup that's really edgy to being a mainstream, mature organization, and kind of what are the pain points there. And then I go through a couple of other challenges. When there's an outside disruption, how do you handle that? I talk about going from offline business to online business, which is like what Weight Watchers did. And I also talk about going from a fixed product, a product-based pricing ownership model to an access model. So that's something that, for example, Intuit has done and Adobe has done recently. So that's the last section of the book. And then at the very end, I just walk people through some very specific steps to get started at looking at their own business, to think about where there might be opportunities to leverage the principles of the membership economy, even on a very small level, to get started. And then, as I mentioned before, I invite people to give me feedback and thoughts on their own journey, and feel free to ask questions, because ultimately I want there to be, a community around the book as well as the book that talks about community.
Perfect. So Robbie, first off, thank you for going through that. You did an excellent job of breaking down your book. I know that's not a simple thing to do. And this next question I feel like is somewhat mean to ask, because I'm asking you to take everything you just talked about and your whole book and put it into a nutshell, which you kind of already did. But if the reader could only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book, everything you just discussed with us, what would you personally want that to be?
I would want listeners to remember that the goal is no longer about the transaction being the finish line. The transaction is the starting line, and the ongoing formal relationship with the customer is going to make a difference between the winners and the losers in the next 20 years.
That's absolutely huge. And it's, I felt like you kind of answered this next question already with what you just said, because I think that was quote worthy. But do you have a favorite quote from your book, and something that you wrote that you feel like will or already has resonated with the audience? Will you take a minute to explain what it means to you?
Yeah. So one idea that has really resonated, and I've heard people, pick it up and reuse it, is the idea of the forever transaction and the idea of super users. And they kind of go hand in hand. The forever transaction is the idea that when someone signs up with your organization, they have the expectation that they will stay with you for as long as you continue to meet the promise that you started out with. So for example, if I signed up when I was 22 years old for subscription with the New York Times, as long as they continue to give me high quality New York based content written by high quality journalists, I'll continue to subscribe forever. And I won't really look at the price. I won't really look at the other options. So that idea of having a forever transaction is really important. And then what the forever transaction often breeds are super users who go beyond just being good, loyal customers, which is what I am, let's say on the New York Times, to becoming advocates and act almost like workers on your behalf to build your business. So these are the people that take it upon themselves to educate the market, to recruit new people in, and to help people who are already in the community. So one example of that is I don't know if you're familiar with CrossFit, Wade.
Yes.
The Church of the Holy CrossFit. But, if you know people in CrossFit, you know how committed they are and how strongly so many of them feel about their membership. They're not thinking about, well, I'm going to do CrossFit for 6 months and then I'm going to cancel. They're thinking it's forever. And many of them are super users in that they use the service regularly and well. They help other people to be successful. They have a policy that you stay until every single CrossFitter has completed their workout. You can't say, well, I'm very important, so I actually have to run because I have a call. You stay until everybody's done, and you support each other, and you call your fellow boxmates if they don't show up for the workout. And so that kind of behavior goes above and beyond just being a good customer and goes into the realm of super user.
What a fantastic example. That was perfect. And we'll take that quote and put that at the show notes at the elpodcast.com, because so many of our listeners are mobile right now, and I know that they want further time to reflect on that. And Robbie, this last question is going to stray away from your book for a minute, and we're going to ask that if there was only one book, one book that you could recommend to our listeners based on the way that it's impacted your life, created a paradigm or a lifestyle shift for you, what book would you suggest?
Wow, that's a great question. And there's so many on different topics that come to mind. But I would say that the one book that has really helped me is a book called Getting to 50-50. And it's a book about married couples with children. And if both people want to have careers, best practices to allow the space for both people to be able to do that. And, as a working mom, that book has been invaluable for me.
Wow. That's the first time that's been recommended. And actually the first time I've heard of a book that's out there with that specific or particular topic. So that's something that I'll definitely be diving into myself. Excellent. Well, thank you for that recommendation. And Robbie, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for listeners to not only get more information on you, but also get more information on your book, The Membership Economy?
Yeah, they can go to www.membershipeconomy.com. That's probably the easiest place. They can go to the peninsulastrategies.com website, which is for my consulting firm. Or they can follow me on Twitter at Robbie Bax, at Robbie Bax, ROBBIEBAX, or join the Facebook Membership Economy community. Any of those would be great ways to get in touch.
Excellent. And we'll put all those resources and links that you just mentioned in the show notes as well. And Robbie, more than anything, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book with us today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Wade. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you want more information on Robbie, check out the show notes at the elpodcast.com. And once again, if you would like to be on an upcoming episode, if you're an entrepreneur whose life, personally and professionally was changed by a book or by books in general, we would love to feature that story. So reach out to me at Twitter or on Twitter at Wade D. Danielson.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.